Hello and welcome to the third and final episode of this endurance racing series. A few days ago in episode 1, I was in London practicing on my simulator for what would be my first ever endurance race in a closed cockpit race car. Then I traveled to Canada to train on the team simulator where I set a new track record. So how do you feel about your record being smashed?
I hate you. Good job.
After that, I was pretty confident I'd have the pace in the real car, but Saturday practice was anything but successful for me. While I tried my best to seem relatively upbeat on the surface, I was actually pretty dejected deep down. 1.8 seconds is a lot of lap time, but just before ending episode 1, we made a shocking discovery in the data.
Yeah, I think this could have been lip mode.
No, that makes sense.
Okay, so I'm not going to try and gain 1 second in just that one high-speed corner.
Yeah, so
Good to know, because I would have done it tomorrow morning. So. Now that I knew I wasn't off the pace after all, I had so much more confidence to send it for my first 90-minute long endurance stint. And when it was over, I handed off the car to the Apex team owner and my teammate, Mark, in P3. For the first several hours, we were actually going pretty strong, especially considering several of the other cars on the grid were faster than ours, but shortly after our chief mechanic Jeff hopped behind the wheel, our car completely vanished off the timing screens. Somehow through all this, I didn't realize that that's our car out there. So basically what happened was Jeff pushed a little too hard in the new tarmac section and dropped 2 wheels in the grass. Now normally that wouldn't be a big deal, but at this track, especially with this new tarmac, there was a literal cliff and it completely scraped the underside of the car and caused some real damage. The oil cooler from the transmission?
yes, so it's not the oil pan, which means we don't need that oil cooler.
Okay.
Once it's off, we can see if there's any other damage, but if not, we just take the oil cooler off, find a way to block the line so it goes back to how it's supposed to be.
Okay.
And hopefully we can keep running.
Okay.
1 hour later.
All right, so it looks like the car is going to be fixed in a few minutes, so I'm about to hop back in. We're obviously quite far behind in the race, but anything can happen as we just saw. So yeah, I'm going to be pushing and make sure the car is still running all okay and that nothing mechanical goes wrong, but excited to get back in the car. I learned very quickly that this is the type of mentality you're supposed to have for endurance racing. In a sprint race environment, you definitely throw in the towel at this point and head home, but in this case, we know that anything could happen, and we've already seen that some of the other teams have had some struggles as well. About 10 cars already have retired at this point. So stint number 2. Already, this is a completely different race for us. Obviously, we're way on the back foot, but also I'm entering onto the track in a totally different position than, well, starting from the lead. So immediately I've actually caught up to the red 944, the current race leader. So at this point, I'm kind of just thinking to myself, like, I just want to prove that I have the pace to keep up with the leader. I think it's the fastest driver of that group as well. So if I can stick with them through the traffic, then I'm going to be pretty happy with my overall personal performance. But I also have another personal goal, and that's to set the fastest lap of the team. That's definitely this sprint driver mentality in me. In Mark's stint earlier, he set a 2-minute dead, but I think that there's a little bit more time in it. There is, however, one small issue with me putting in a competitive time, and that's that we've lost the front splitter. Now, to be honest, I didn't think it was going to cause that much of an issue. Like, it's just a little piece of wood. How much could it really do? But it turned out that it was causing a huge balance shift in the car, and you can see how much understeer there is in the car now, especially through those medium to high speed sections. The splitter isn't the only variable here though. We're running on one set of tires through this whole race, and some other teams do the same thing as well depending on what compound they're running, but everyone's car feels completely different at this stage of the race from the beginning. So we actually might have a pace advantage over some of these other quick cars. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the car is starting to feel a little bit like Jello when I push for consecutive laps, and it doesn't take long before I have my first real mistake. There was a big drop-off off the back of that curve, which caused Mark to spin yesterday, so I immediately had flashbacks. But luckily, I just kept the wheel perfectly straight, kept some throttle on, and there was no major issue. Despite the small mistake though, I don't want to be stuck behind this Porsche's bumper any longer than I have to. Maybe he didn't know that our car had issues and that we were many laps down, but he definitely didn't want to give it up that easily. And after carving my way through a ton of lap traffic, I was finally ready to put in a fast lap time with a bit of clean air. So to extract a little bit more one-lap pace out of the car, I had to do something a little weird for an endurance race. So you can see in the lap time charts, I was doing consistent 202s, and this was with basically no traffic. And that was because I was actually backing off a little bit, saving the 2 front tires, which are both taking a huge beating around this track. And that's already allowed me to get down to my new personal best, a 2-minute .1, but it was a little bit of a scruffy lap, so I think if I put everything together, I can go a little bit quicker. There's no shortage of understeer through the new tarmac section, and it's unfortunately creeping into some of the other medium and high-speed corners as well. But despite that, we were still able to put in our fastest time by far. The trigger point's messed up, so it came in at 59.9, but in reality it's a 59.6. I've tried to push the lap right after, but the car is really not liking it. The tires are already overheated, so that's going to be my best lap for the rest of the stint. The rest of the stint was kind of uneventful, so I handed the car off to Nick, who drove the other car for his first stint. All right, so I've been working on some pit stops, handling the fire bottle for the last couple of stints. Did some interviews as well, so haven't been super involved in what's going on in the race, but Venetia's just put in some flyers in the other car. It looks like they're in P4 at the moment, and they're chasing down P3 at like an astonishing rate. So the other car right now is in contention for a podium, and Mark's actually just hopped in the other car to try and seal the deal, basically. So looking good for the team as a whole. Obviously our cars, I think, get around in P9 right now, so it's gonna be real tough to come back from that, but we're doing everything we can. The guys are putting in good laps, so can't ask for anything else. Also, the air temperature is dropping a lot right now, and the wind's it's super strong. I don't know if you can tell. It's helping turn 1 just on the entry with a bit more grip, but then you have a tailwind at the exit, so turn 1's gonna be gnarly. Glad I'm not the one out there at the moment. looks like my car's coming in for fuel now, so they're about to do a driver change. Jeff's back in the car. Nick had a solid stint, and a lot of other cars have had issues as well, so we're now back into the top 10. Jeff didn't get that many laps earlier when he had his crash, so he's getting back in the car now to finish out the last hour of this race. But to make things even harder for him, Nick is reporting that there is some serious brake fade.
Meanwhile,
Mark's going for my time. He's got a 59.8. I did a 59.6 in the last stint, so it's quali mode now at this point in the race, isn't it? The rears are looking like, oh, look at the, oh yeah. You see the rubber is actually starting to chunk off the edge of the tire. Are these the same tires we were running yesterday? Or this is a different set?
I think they're the same tires, partially.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm used to a set literally lasting like max 10 laps, 20 laps.
These tires don't fall off. Oh.
No, I mean, we've been doing the same lap times this whole time. It's crazy. Mark's pushing. Mark is pushing. Brad just told me that we're 58 seconds behind in the second car, number 81, from P3. So the podium is in contention for sure.
The brake pads might be disintegrating today.
That sounds fun. Yeah. This is the difference between sprint and endurance racing. Like, the car is a totally different car from the beginning to the end of the race. Like, even just between my stints, which were only like, what, 2.5, 3 hours apart, the car was a totally different behavior. Granted, I was missing the entire front aero package. I'm curious to see what the guys will say, what the performance is like now, almost 8 hours into this race. So what was your stint like?
Well, consistency was the name of the game for that one.
Yeah.
I don't know what lap times you were setting, but the best I could do was a 206. But consistency, I think I was getting usually within 1 second of every single lap, even when I had traffic. So yeah, honestly felt really good. I overtook a bunch of cars, had some really good passes. It was a good session. I was pretty satisfied with it.
Did you feel like the car was more understeery now than before? I guess it's the first time you've driven this car this weekend, right?
The car definitely felt shittier.
Yeah.
Without the front splitter, there's a noticeable difference in front grip.
Yeah.
The brakes seemed a bit shittier, so I actually went off. I had to go straight through the back straight there. I couldn't make the right turn.
No way.
So I had to do the U and go back around, and after that, I started braking at the 100.
Oh my God. The 100?
Yeah. I had to just like a lot lighter on the brakes, but brake a lot earlier.
Yeah.
Hard braking, no go.
Oh my God. Well, it sounds like Jeff's now complaining about the brakes as well. So it sounds like the team's preparing to get some brake pads.
Spun out. The leader
spun out. Oh,
Okay,
He's in the
there we
ditch.
go.
He's stuck.
Oh, he's in the ditch.
The P2's in the books right now.
How far? Oh, shit.
Okay, so now car number 81, our second car, is in contention for P2 as well. And considering we're catching that car, they might actually be in contention for the lead. Oh shit. This is one of our biggest competitors in this race, the other white Subaru BRZ. And we had calculated that they were done with pit stops up to this point. So for them to show up in the pit lane all of a sudden really had us confused and quite hopeful. Whoa, what's going on? Okay, he stopped. It was just a drive-through. It looks like a drive-through.
Oh man, I can't believe it.
It's getting spicy now.
It's spicy now.
How much time to go? 45 minutes to go right now, and it's turning into a sprint race yet again. I can definitely tell the energy is high now. Everyone wants to bank this podium in, and things are going in our favor right now, so it might just be feasible. Do we have enough fuel to go to the end?
Hopefully.
Well, I guess we'll see. Things were looking super positive for the second car, but then we realized our car was nowhere to be found.
I don't see anything on the tow truck.
A few moments later.
So, looks like Jeff actually ended up pitting the car. Well, that doesn't look right. I'm not an expert, but...
Having the oil on the outside of the tire like that, all it does is make it slipperier so we can go faster.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh my god. That's insane.
All right, so our goal today was to get the maximum out of our cars, and I think we did. See, this morning we put new brake pads, and this is what a new brake pad typically looks like. You've got the brake pad material. Here's the friction side here. This side here is the side that goes against the piston or the caliper, and that's what everything gets pushed on. And that's what a new brake pad looks like. Pretty nice. We made it to 7.5 hours today. This is what came out of the car. Slightly different. This started life like that, and as you can see, it's been used. We've actually gone completely through the backing plate, which is sort of formed like, I don't know, Play-Doh around the piston, and the piston has come through and is actually wearing on the back side of the rotor, and evidently you do not get the same amount of friction out of the piston as you do brake pad material. So yeah, the brakes were, I was described, the brakes were a little soft when I got in the car. And so I exit pit lane and go full send to corner 2, and yeah, I saw God. Yeah. Thanks, Nick.
Welcome.
I'm trying to figure out how many seconds a lap faster he needs than P3.
So with my car officially out of the running 7.5 hours into this 8-hour race, it was time to focus all of our attention onto the other car. Our confidence level was pretty high, but then we did these calculations now that the fastest drivers have all gotten back in for the final stint, and it wasn't looking good.
I mean, 2 minutes divided by 12.5 is like 16 seconds.
Wow. Okay.
So basically impossible. And before we knew it, the race was over and we finished P4. Our sister car did a fantastic job, especially given that this was the first race for 2 of its drivers, both Vinny and Cade, so huge props to them. A DNF for our car though was disappointing, but not unusual even for the best of circumstances in endurance racing. Everything from the drivers, brakes, the engine, the electronics, the tires are all being pushed to their absolute limits. And when you think about it, it's kind of astonishing that these modified street cars even survive the races like this at all. I think there are 2 major takeaways I got from this experience. Number 1, endurance racing is not the monotonous experience I thought it would be. It very often feels like a sprint race in a competitive environment like this, and doing it alongside 3 or 4 other teammates makes the little wins throughout the race taste even sweeter. And while the field was still very competitive with each other on track. But off track, everyone was still there to support the winners in the end. It was actually pretty refreshing after being in such a pressure cooker type of environment for so long. The second thing I took away from this was just how valuable the simulator training was. Even though the track wasn't laser scanned that I was practicing on, I immediately had the confidence driving this car on Saturday, even in fairly damp conditions. Put speed aside, it's that kind of preparation that can prevent you from having a big crash in a car or track you've never driven before. So it's safe to say that this was an unforgettable experience for me. So huge thanks to Mark from Apex and Swellio from the Motor Racing Checklist for making this all happen. If you'd like to do this experience yourself, be sure to fill out the form in the description. Remember, you don't need a racing license to do this. And who knows, I might end up just being your teammate. Anyways, see you guys all on the next one.